Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Defiance, staring at the viewport. The stars looked the same as they always did, but everything had changed 3 hours ago. His communications officer had detected them first, massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. Hundreds of ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Now those ships sat there waiting, watching. His hand rested on the command console. He was 52 years old and had spent 30 years in Earth's Navy. He had fought in the colony wars, survived the Mars Rebellion, and commanded the first human fleet to reach beyond known space. But nothing had prepared him for this. "Admiral, incoming transmission," his officer said. "They're broadcasting to Earth directly." Nodded, "Put it through." The changed. A creature appeared, tall and covered in dark scales that shimmered like oil. Its eyes were golden and ancient. Behind it stood 11 other beings, each one different, each one clearly from another world. They wore robes that seemed to shimmer with their own light. "People of Earth," the scaled creature said. Its voice was deep and seemed to echo. "I am High Chancellor of the Galactic Sovereignty Council. We have governed this galaxy for 200,000 of your years. We maintain order. We ensure peace. We protect the weak from the strong." Felt his stomach tighten. He had heard speeches like this before. They never ended well. On Earth, billions of people watched the same broadcast. In New York, Ambassador Lee stood in the United Nations building, surrounded by representatives from every nation. She was 38, calm under pressure, and had negotiated treaties that had ended decades of conflict. But her hands were shaking now. "Your species has achieved faster-than-light travel," continued. "You have spread to 47 star systems. By the laws of this galaxy, you are now subject to the Protection Decree. All new civilizations must pay tribute to the Council for 500 years. This is not negotiable. This is law." Murmurs filled the UN chamber, raised her hand for silence. "The tribute is simple," said. 40% of your resources, metals, minerals, energy. 100 million of your people to serve as workers in Council territories. All of your military technology and weapons designs. You have 30 days to comply." The screen changed, watched in horror as images appeared, planets burning, cities reduced to glass, alien bodies floating in space, hundreds of different species all destroyed. "These civilizations refused," said. "They thought themselves special, unique, strong enough to stand alone. They were wrong. 347 species have refused the Protection Decree in the last 50,000 years. None survived." The images kept coming. World after world turned to ash and ruin. "We do not wish to harm you," said, though his voice held no warmth. "We simply require obedience. 30 days, people of Earth, choose wisely." The transmission ended. Silence filled the UN chamber. Then everyone started shouting at once. Closed her eyes and counted to 10. When she opened them, she caught the eye of Captain Minu, who stood near the military section. He was 35, sharp-minded, and ran Earth's military intelligence division. He gave her a small nod. They both knew what was coming. Hours later, sat in a secure conference room with Minu and 50 other key leaders from around the world. Presidents, generals, scientists, and diplomats filled every seat. "We have to refuse," said General Torres from South America. "We cannot give them our people." "We cannot fight them," countered Premier from the Asian coalition. "You saw those images, 300 civilizations destroyed." "They're trying to scare us," Minu said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "That's what the images were for. Fear is their weapon." "It's working," someone muttered. "Stood, we need information. We need to know who we're dealing with. Ambassador Lee, send them a response. Tell them we need time to consider their generous offer." He said the last words with barely hidden disgust. Nodded, "And while they wait." "While they wait," Minu said, "we learn everything we can about them. Their ships, their weapons, their history. if we're going to fight. We're not fighting, President interrupted. We're not ready for war with a galactic empire. Then we're not ready to be slaves either, said. His voice was hard. Forgive me, Mr. President, but I've seen what happens to people who surrender their freedom. It never ends well. The room fell silent. I'll send the message, but we need a plan. We need options, both for compliance and for other paths. Minyu pulled out a data pad. I'm already working on it. I have teams analyzing their fleet composition. We intercepted some of their comm signals. They're old protocols, nothing sophisticated. These people haven't had to fight in a long time. Or they're so advanced they don't need to try, someone said. Maybe, Minyu agreed. But I don't think so. When you rule through fear for 200,000 years, you forget how to actually fight. Looked at the young intelligence officer. You think we have a chance? Minyu met his eyes. I think we have 30 days to find out. Across the solar system, the Council fleet waited. On their flagship, watched Earth's blue sphere on his screen. They will submit, he told his subordinates. They always do. But deep in his ancient heart, something felt different about these humans. The way they had looked at him during the broadcast, not with fear, not with resignation. With anger. He dismissed the thought. Anger meant nothing against superior force. In 30 days, Earth would bow like all the others. On Earth sent the message. The people of Earth have received your protection decree. We require time to prepare our response. It was polite, diplomatic, calm. It bought them 30 days. And in those 30 days, everything would change. Doctor had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes burned as she scrolled through alien data files on her screen. Around her, the lab at Seoul University hummed with activity. Researchers from every nation had gathered here, working around the clock. Found something, she said quietly. Her assistant looked up. What is it? Pointed at her screen. The Council's pattern. Look at the species they've conquered. Every single one was at the same technological level when they were contacted. Early FTL capability, multi-system colonies, but no advanced weapons yet. So they only pick on people who can't fight back effectively. They're bullies, not warriors. Felt a spark of hope for the first time in days. 5,000 kilometers away, Colonel crawled through an air duct. Her team of 6 Special Forces soldiers followed silently. They were aboard a Council monitoring station in neutral space, a small facility the Council had left to watch humanity's communications. It had been surprisingly easy to infiltrate, too easy. Dropped into a corridor and moved toward the central computer core. 2 alien guards stood there, looking bored. They had been standing in the same positions for hours, not even checking their surroundings. Comfortable soldiers make poor soldiers, whispered. Her team took down the guards without a sound. Inside the computer core, plugged in her data spike. You're up. Back on Earth, sat in a basement server room in Seoul, his fingers flying across multiple keyboards. He was 29, brilliant, and had designed most of Earth's AI security systems. Now he was using those skills to crack alien encryption. Their security is a joke, he said over the comm. It's like they never considered anyone would try to hack them. The data started flowing. Battle records, fleet movements, strategic plans. Everything the Council had done for the last 10,000 years. His eyes widened. Colonel, you need to see this. In the UN building, Minyu stood before a gathered council of military leaders. Images from SHAC played on the large screens. Look at their combat records, Minyu said. The last real war they fought was 50,000 years ago. Since then, nothing. Just pacification missions against inferior civilizations. They show up with overwhelming force, the enemy surrenders or gets destroyed. They've never had to adapt, never had to innovate. But their technology, someone started, is old, said via video link. Really old. I'm analyzing their ship systems. The designs are ancient. They haven't upgraded in because they haven't needed to. Why improve when no one can challenge you? Admiral leaned forward. So they're complacent. Completely, Minu agreed. They're bureaucrats with big ships, and here's the interesting part. He brought up another file. In their entire history, only 3 species ever fought back. All 3 fought defensively, trying to protect their. All 3 eventually lost. So fighting is pointless, a general said. No, Minu said. Fighting defensively is pointless. No one has ever gone on offense against the Council. No one has ever attacked them first. The room went silent. Ambassador stood. You're suggesting we strike first. That's insane. Maybe, Minu said. But think about it. They expect tribute or surrender. Those are the only options in their database. What if we give them something they've never seen before? What if we attack? We'd lose, someone said. We'll lose anyway if we surrender, said quietly. At least this way we go down fighting. In her lab made another discovery. She called immediately. I found records of the 3 species who fought back, said. The Council's reports describe them as irrationally aggressive and refusing logical surrender. But here's the thing. The Council took heavy casualties in each war. 30% losses in one case, 40% in another. But they still won, said. Yes, because those species fought to survive. They fought to defend. But Ambassador, the Council has never faced an enemy willing to accept mutual destruction. They're too long-lived, too risk-averse. War to them is a calculation, not a commitment. Felt her heart race. What are you saying? I'm saying humans are different. We've spent our entire history fighting each other. We understand total war in a way they don't. If we make them believe we'll burn everything down, including ourselves, just to hurt them, they might back down, finished. It's possible. Days passed. The deadline drew closer. Earth's factories worked non-stop building weapons, ships, and ammunition. Every nation contributed. Old enemies worked side by side. Researcher Sora Bay, working in communications, discovered something crucial. Their command structure is slow, she reported. Messages take hours to route through their bureaucracy. They're used to having time to make decisions. Fast-moving situations aren't in their playbook. His team returned from another raid, this time on a Council logistics hub. Their supply lines are stretched thin, she reported. They're supporting 10,000 species across the galaxy. If we hit the right targets, we could cripple entire sectors. Gathered all the intelligence. 12 days remained. He called a meeting with Earth's leadership. Here's what we know, he said. The Council is powerful but complacent. They're slow but organized. They're advanced but stagnant. They expect us to surrender because everyone always has. President, who led the United Earth government, stood. She was 60 years old, had survived 2 assassination attempts, and once stared down a nuclear threat without blinking. She looked at everyone in the room. My grandmother was a slave, she said quietly, not metaphorically, literally. She was taken from her home, forced to work for others, treated as property. She escaped. She fought. She lived to see freedom. Eyes were hard. I will not surrender my people to slavery. I don't care what the odds are. We could lose everything, someone warned. We'll lose everything anyway if we submit, said. At least this way we'll lose it fighting. At least this way we'll lose it free. A vote was called. It wasn't even close. Earth would fight. Minu presented the battle plan. We hit them everywhere at once. Their shipyards, their logistics hubs, their command stations. We move fast, hit hard, and don't give them time to react. We make them bleed. And if we fail, someone asked. Then we fail standing up, said. 10 days left, then 9, then 8. On the Council flagship, reviewed Earth's transmissions. They were preparing something, but he couldn't tell what. Some kind of ceremony, perhaps. Humans seemed to like rituals. Should we be concerned? His aide asked. Laughed. About primitives who had FTL for barely 20 years. No, they'll surrender, they always do. But he ordered extra surveillance anyway, just to be safe. 7 days, 6, 5. Finished his virus. It would spread through the Council's communication network, causing chaos and confusion. It won't destroy them, he said, but it'll blind them for a while. That was all they needed, a while. 3 days remained when called the final War Council. Every admiral, every general, every captain attended. In 72 hours, said, we'll give the Council our answer, and then we'll show them what happens when you threaten humanity. His officers stood and saluted. The countdown continued. Earth held its breath. And in the darkness of space, humanity's warships prepared to launch. Day 30 arrived like a storm. Everyone could see coming, but no one could stop. Fleet Admiral Song stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, Earth's largest warship. Around him, the home defense fleet floated in perfect formation. 300 ships, every single vessel humanity could spare. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was what they had. All ships report ready, sir, his officer said. Nodded. He was 61 years old and had commanded Earth's home defense for the last decade. Today might be his last command. That was acceptable. Some things were worth dying for. In another part of the solar system, Commander Ryu checked his carrier group one final time. 12 carriers, each loaded with hundreds of small attack drones. His ships were older, slower, but that was part of the plan. The Council would underestimate them. That was the point. On Earth, in a secure bunker beneath Geneva, Ambassador Lee stood before a camera. Behind her, President and 50 other world leaders waited. This broadcast would reach not just the Council, but every species in the galaxy. Thousands of civilizations would watch humanity's response. Wore a simple black suit. No jewelry, no decorations. Just black fabric and a white shirt. She had written her speech herself, rejecting all the flowery language the diplomats had suggested. Sometimes simple words were strongest. Ready? The technician asked. Nodded. The camera light turned red. At the edge of the solar system, sat on his command throne, waiting. Around him, his flagship's bridge was filled with council officers from a dozen different species. They looked relaxed. Some were even playing games on their personal devices. Why wouldn't they be relaxed? This was routine. The humans would surrender, tribute would be collected, and the Council would add another species to their empire. Incoming transmission from Earth, an officer said. Put it through, ordered. He straightened his robes and composed his face into a suitable expression of benevolent authority. Appeared on his screen. She looked small, fragile, young, felt a moment of pity. She would have to deliver her species' surrender. That couldn't be easy. High Chancellor said. Her voice was steady. 30 days ago, you presented the people of Earth with your protection decree. You demanded tribute. You demanded our resources, our people, and our freedom. Nodded, and now you will comply. This is wise. His expression didn't change. We have considered your offer very carefully. We have reviewed your laws, studied your history, and examined your empire. We have debated and discussed and analyzed every possible option. Good, said, then. And we have reached a decision, continued. The people of Earth, representing all nations and all peoples of our world, have voted. The vote was unanimous. Leaned back, satisfied. Of course it was unanimous. Fear was a powerful motivator. Looked directly into the camera, directly at him. Her eyes were hard. No. Silence. Blinked, excuse me. No, repeated. That is our answer to your demand. No, we will not pay tribute. We will not surrender our people. We will not submit to your empire. No. Around the council bridge, officers stopped what they were doing. They stared at the screen in disbelief. You cannot refuse, said. You have seen what happens to species who refuse. Yes, said, we have, and we choose to refuse anyway. This is madness. You will be destroyed. Perhaps, agreed. But we will be destroyed free. Not as slaves, not as tribute. We are humans, Chancellor. We bow to no one. Felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Genuine surprise. You understand this means war. Behind, President stepped forward into the camera's view. Yes, Chancellor, we understand perfectly. You have declared war on humanity. Now humanity declares war on you. Admiral's face appeared on another screen. High Chancellor, this is Admiral Park of the Earth Defense Fleet. You have threatened our people. You have demanded our freedom. You have made a terrible mistake. You have no chance, said, recovering his composure. You are one species. We are 10,000. Your fleet is primitive. Our empire spans the galaxy. Smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Then you have a lot to lose, don't you? We only have to hurt you badly enough that the other 9,999 species realize you're not invincible. How many of them do you think will keep paying tribute once they see you bleed? Felt a chill run down his spine. This conversation is over, he declared. You have made your choice. In 3 days, my fleet will advance on Earth. You will be given one final chance to surrender. If you refuse again, your world will burn. 3 days, said. We're not going to wait 3 days. What? You see, Chancellor, you've been thinking about this all wrong. You thought we'd wait for you to attack. You thought we'd fight defensively, protect our home, try to survive. His eyes widened. You wouldn't dare. The transmission ended. On the Council flagship, alarms started blaring. Sir, multiple FTL signatures. Human ships are jumping into Council space. Where? Demanded. Everywhere. They're hitting shipyards at, supply depots at, the command station at, 12 simultaneous attacks. Gripped his throne. This was impossible. Species didn't attack first. They defended, they tried to survive, they didn't. They're insane, he whispered. In Earth orbit, Dr. Han watched from the weapons development station as the last wave of ships jumped to FTL. She had spent 20 years developing humanity's weapons, nuclear-pumped lasers, relativistic kinetic missiles, antimatter mines, weapons the Council had never seen because they'd never needed to innovate. Every ship carried her designs now. Good hunting, she whispered. Across the galaxy, humanity struck. His carrier group appeared at the Council's largest shipyard. The facility was massive, a ring of metal orbiting a gas giant, building 3 new warships simultaneously. Hundreds of workers moved through the structure. Release the drones, ordered. Thousands of small, fast-attack drones poured from his carriers. They had one job: destroy the shipyard. They didn't need to survive. They just needed to hit hard. The Council's defense platforms opened fire, but they were designed to fight big, slow targets. The drones were small and fast. They slipped through the defensive fire like water through fingers. Explosions rippled across the shipyard. Metal twisted and burned. The facility broke apart, falling into the gas giant's atmosphere. Human ships appeared near the supply depot. Captain, now commanding a strike frigate, watched as her weapons officer armed the relativistic missiles. Fire, she said calmly. The missiles accelerated to 90% of light speed. When they hit the depot, the explosion was visible from 3 systems away. At the Council's regional command station scrambled fighters to defend itself. Then, virus activated. The station's computers crashed. Communications went dead. The fighters lost guidance and drifted helplessly. Human ships moved in and finished the job. All across Council space, the same scene repeated. Fast attacks, overwhelming force, no mercy. In 48 hours, the Council lost 40% of its military infrastructure. On the Council flagship, watched the reports flood in. Disaster after disaster, defeat after defeat. This is impossible, he said again. His aide trembled. Sir, the other council species are demanding answers. They want to know how humans are doing this. They want to know if we can stop them. Can we? Asked. Silence. Send the fleet to Earth, ordered. All of it. We will destroy there. We will make an example of them that the galaxy will never forget. Sir, our forces are scattered. It will take time to gather them. Then gather them. I want every ship we have converging on Earth. We will crush these primitives and remind the galaxy why the Council rules. The order went out. And on Earth in the command center, Minu smiled. He took the bait. Nodded. Phase 2 begins. Get on the line. Tell him the Council fleet is coming. And the moon. Activate all weapons. It's time to show them what happens when you threaten our home. The war had begun. And humanity was just getting started. The Council fleet arrived at Earth like a metal storm. 500 warships, each 1 kilometer long, dropped out of FTL in perfect formation. They had come to make an example. They had come to punish humanity for its defiance. What they found waiting for them was worse than any nightmare. Fleet Admiral Song stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the enemy fleet appear on his screens. His home defense fleet was positioned between the Council and Earth, 300 ships against 500. The numbers weren't in his favor. But numbers weren't everything. Admiral, they're hailing us, his communications officer said. Ignore it, said calmly. All ships begin withdrawal pattern Delta, lead them toward the moon. His fleet started moving, slowly backing away from the Council armada. To the enemy, it must have looked like fear, like humanity's brave words had crumbled in the face of superior force. That was exactly what wanted them to think. On the Council flagship watched the human ships retreat. They're running, he said with satisfaction. As they should, all ships advance, destroy them. The Council fleet surged forward, chasing his retreating forces. On Earth's moon, hidden weapons platforms came online. Dr. Han had spent 2 years converting the lunar surface into the largest weapons platform in human history. Rail guns, missile batteries, laser arrays, energy weapons the Council had never imagined. The moon had become a fortress. Enemy entering range, the weapons officer reported. Wait, said, let them get closer, let them commit. The Council fleet advanced, focused entirely on retreating ships. They didn't notice the moon's surface opening up, didn't see the weapons emerging from concealed bunkers. Now, said quietly. The moon opened fire. Thousands of projectiles launched simultaneously. Missiles streaked across space. Energy beams lanced out. The Council's lead ships exploded before they could react. What is this? Screamed. Where is this fire coming from? The moon, sir. They've weaponized their moon. Fleet stopped retreating, stopped running. They turned and charged back at the Council fleet, catching them in a crossfire between the lunar weapons and Earth's warships. The Battle of Luna had begun. Space lit up with explosions. Ships died by the dozens. The Council fleet tried to scatter, but they were too tightly packed, had led them into a killing field. All ships focus fire on their command vessels, ordered. Take out their coordination. The Indomitable's weapons blazed. Around him, his fleet poured everything they had into the enemy. Ships exploded. Debris filled space. The battle was chaos. But it was controlled chaos. Humanity had practiced this, prepared for this. The Council hadn't fought a real battle in. On the flagship watched his fleet die. Pull back, retreat. But it was too late. The Council ships were too close to each other, too tangled in the battle. When they tried to retreat, they crashed into their own vessels. And then triggered the final trap. Throughout the battle zone, small objects had been floating. Debris the Council had assumed. Wreckage from destroyed ships. They were antimatter mines. His voice came over the command channel, detonating in 3, 2, 1. The mines exploded. Not with fire, antimatter didn't burn. It simply converted matter into pure energy. The detonations tore through the Council fleet like a knife through paper. When the light faded, 200 Council ships were simply gone, erased. The remaining 300 were damaged, scattered, their formation broken. "All ships pursue," ordered. "Don't let them regroup." But he knew the cost. On his damaged screen, saw that he'd lost 180 ships. 60% of Earth's home defense fleet destroyed in one battle. The price of freedom was written in fire and blood. Far from Earth, Ambassador stood on a captured Council world, surrounded by aliens who had been slaves for generations. The planet was called, and humanity had liberated it 3 days ago. Now she addressed the freed slaves, her words being broadcast across the galaxy. "The Council told you that you were weak," said, "that you needed their protection, that resistance was impossible. They lied." Around her, thousands of alien beings listened. Dozens of different species, all formerly enslaved by the Council. "Humanity is not special," continued. "We are not more advanced. We are not stronger, but we refuse to bow. We refuse to surrender. And we are showing the galaxy that the Council can be beaten." She gestured to the burning Council administration building behind her. "We are not fighting for conquest. We are fighting for freedom. Your freedom, our freedom, everyone's freedom. The Council has ruled through fear for 200,000 years. That ends now." The broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy. On 100 worlds, enslaved species watched, and on 3 of those worlds, rebellions began. There were a peaceful species who had paid tribute for 1,000 years. They made beautiful art and studied philosophy. But they had once been warriors, long ago, before the Council broke their spirit. Watching humans fight rekindled something in them. They rose up against their Council overseers. It started small, a refused order here, a destroyed tribute shipment there. But it spread. Within days, the entire was in rebellion. There were traders who had bought their freedom with centuries of economic servitude. They watched humanity's war and made a calculation. The Council was losing. That meant new opportunities. They began selling weapons to other species who wanted to rebel. They shared intelligence about Council fleet movements. They became humanity's supply line. There were warriors who had fought the Council 50,000 years ago and lost. They had spent the since then paying tribute, their military traditions reduced to ceremonial displays. But they remembered how to fight. They contacted Earth directly. "We will fight beside you," their leader said. "Our debt of shame ends today." Received the reports in his damaged flagship as it limped back to Council space. 3 species in open rebellion, a dozen more showing signs of unrest, and the humans, those cursed humans, were still attacking. "How many ships have we lost?" he asked. 42% of our total military capacity," his aide said quietly. "And that's just in the first week of fighting." Felt old. He was 8,000 years old, but he had never felt it until now. The other Council species, what are they saying? 6 of the 12 are calling for negotiations with humanity. They say the war is costing too much, that we should cut our losses. Cowards spat. "We cannot negotiate. The moment we show weakness, the entire empire will collapse. Every species we rule will see it as permission to rebel." "Then what do we do?" Stood, "We show strength. We prove that resistance is futile. Gather what remains of the fleet. We will strike at Earth one more time. We will destroy there so completely that even the memory of human defiance will die." His aide hesitated. "Sir, our forces are depleted. Intelligence suggests humanity has prepared additional defenses. Another assault on Earth could." "I don't care," roared. "Send the order. All remaining forces converge on Sol system. We end this now." On Earth, Minu received the intelligence reports. Zvirus was still feeding them data from Council networks. "He's doing it again," Minu said. "Is sending everything he has left to Earth." How many ships? Asked. 400, maybe 500 if he pulls forces from the frontier. Did the math in his head. After the Battle of Luna, Earth had less than 120 ships operational. Even with the reinforcements, they'd be outnumbered 4-1. Can we win? President asked. Looked at her honestly. I don't know, but we can make him pay for every meter of space. Then we fight, said, again. His voice came over the comm from, the freed species are asking to help, they can provide weapons, they are sending ships, they have already committed their fleet. Felt hope stir. How many ships total? Maybe 200 combined. They're not all warships. Some are converted freighters, some are old defense platforms, but they want to fight. Then we fight together, said. Across the galaxy, word spread. Humanity had given the Council its answer, and that answer had been written in fire. Now the final battle was coming. Earth prepared once more. The Council fleet arrived at Earth for the second time, but this time they found something they had never expected to see. An Allied fleet waiting for them. Stared at the screens in disbelief. Human ships, yes, but also warships with their distinctive curved hulls, vessels covered in painted symbols, trading ships that had been hastily armed with weapons, even a few defense platforms somehow transported across the galaxy. 400 ships, his tactical officer reported. Half of them aren't even military grade. It doesn't matter, said. They're still in our way. All ships advance, destroy them all. On the Defiance, Admiral watched the Council fleet approach. Beside him were the faces of his new allies. Admiral, Fleet Master, Merchant Captain. This is it, said. Whatever happens today, we fight as one. For freedom, growled. For justice, said. For profit, added, then grinned. And maybe a little bit for freedom, too. The fleets met. But this time something was different. The Council fleet was tired. Their crews had been fighting for weeks. Their ships were damaged from previous battles. Their commanders were uncertain. And they were facing an enemy that had nothing left to lose. The battle exploded across orbital space. His fleet used every trick they had learned: fast strikes, ambush tactics, coordinated attacks. They fought with controlled fury, their old warrior traditions awakened. The ships moved in beautiful, precise patterns, their movements almost artistic. They did what they did best, adapted and improvised. On Earth below, billions watched the battle unfold. Cities across the planet went dark as power was diverted to the orbital defenses. People stood in the streets, looking up at the lights in the sky, knowing that each light represented a ship, a crew, lives being spent to protect their freedom. In the Council flagship, watched his fleet struggle. This wasn't how wars were supposed to go. The superior force was supposed to win. That was the law of the universe. But these species weren't following the law. Sir, multiple ships breaking formation, his officer reported. The contingent is refusing to engage the ships are falling back. What, why? They say they have trade agreements with They say they cannot justify fighting against free species. Felt his empire crumbling. Order them to fight, they are Council members. They're not responding, sir. On Earth, Doctor was broadcasting constantly to every species in the galaxy. Her researchers had uncovered thousands of years of Council secrets. Corruption, abuse, lies. The Council told you they protect you, said in her broadcast. But look at their records. They take your resources and give you nothing. They claim to maintain peace, but they create dependence. They say they're necessary, but the truth is they're parasites. The broadcasts reached every corner of the galaxy. Species that had never questioned the Council began to question. Species that had been afraid began to hope. In the battle, his diplomatic work bore fruit. 3 more Council species from the fight, their ships simply dropping out of formation and jumping away. Was screaming orders now, but no one was listening. His flagship was surrounded by human ships. The Defiance moved in close, its weapons locked on the Council command center. "Surrender," said over the open channel. "It's over." "Never," roared. "The Council does not surrender." "Then the Council dies," said sadly. He gave the order. The Defiance fired. But at the last second, someone on the Council flagship acted. Not one of his officers, a young member of the species who had served the Council all his life. He saw what was coming. He saw his own death. And he decided he didn't want to die for an old fool's pride. The officer disabled the flagship's shields and weapons. "We surrender," he broadcast. "The flagship surrenders." Turned on him in rage, but it was too late. All across the Council fleet, ships were surrendering. Some fought on, but without coordination, without leadership, they fell quickly. The battle ended not with a grand explosion, but with a whimper. The mighty Council fleet, defeated by an alliance of species they had considered beneath them, took surrender personally. The old Council leader was brought aboard the Defiance in chains. "You've doomed the galaxy," said. "Without the Council there will be chaos, war, suffering." "No," said, stepping forward. "There will be freedom. What people do with that freedom is up to them." 10 years later, Ambassador Lee stood before the first session of the Free Galactic Assembly. She had been elected Secretary General by unanimous vote. Around her, representatives from 67 species sat in a circular chamber. No thrones, no hierarchy, just equals working together. "The Council ruled through fear," said. "We will govern through cooperation." The Council demanded obedience. "We will request participation." The Council took without giving. "We will trade fairly." The representatives voted on the new charter. It passed. On Earth, Admiral Park taught at the military academy. His students came from a dozen different worlds now. He told them about the war, about the sacrifices, about the prices paid. "Never forget," he told them. "Freedom isn't free, it costs. Sometimes it costs everything, but it's worth it." Doctor became the head of the Galactic Historical Society. She made sure the truth about the Council was preserved. Not just their crimes, but also how they fell. How one species' refusal to submit had sparked a revolution across the stars. And the Council leadership stood trial for crimes against sapient beings. Some were found guilty and imprisoned. Others were allowed to live out their lives in exile. The Council species themselves were not punished. They too had been trapped by the system they had created. On a world, children learned a new story. About the humans who had said no. About the word that shook a galaxy. On a planet, artists created beautiful works depicting the moment of liberation. The image most often shown was Ambassador speaking one simple word: no. On trading stations, merchants told stories of the greatest deal ever made. Humans had traded their safety for everyone's freedom and somehow made it work. The Free Galactic Assembly grew. More species joined. The old tributary systems were dismantled. Slavery was outlawed across all member worlds. Wars still happened. Freedom meant the freedom to make mistakes, but they were smaller, local, resolved through negotiation more often than force. Earth became the cultural center of the new galaxy, not because humans demanded it, but because other species wanted to learn from them, wanted to understand what made them different, what gave them the strength to resist when everyone else had submitted. Now Old and Gray explained it to a group of young alien students. It wasn't that we were stronger or smarter, it's that we remembered something the galaxy had forgotten. Power comes from those who resist it. The moment you accept chains, you give them power. The moment you refuse chains, you take it back. "But you could have lost everything," one student said. "Yes," agreed, "but we would have lost everything anyway. The Council would have taken it piece by piece over 500 years. At least our way, we got to choose how we fell. And in choosing, we found we didn't have to fall at all." President, retired now, lived in a small house by the sea. People still visited her, asking for wisdom. What was the secret? A young human asked her once, "How did we win?" Looked at the ocean and smiled. "We didn't think about winning. We thought about not losing what mattered. There's a difference. When you fight to win, you can be discouraged by the odds. When you fight to not lose yourself, the odds don't matter. You fight because you must." On the anniversary of Earth's reply to the Council, the entire galaxy observed a moment of silence. They remembered the ships that had been lost, the people who had died, the prices paid. And then they celebrated, because those deaths had meant something. Those prices had bought something precious. They had bought freedom. In schools across 1,000 worlds, teachers told the story, how humanity had been given an ultimatum, how they had faced impossible odds, how they had been asked to choose between slavery and destruction, and how they had answered with a single word that changed everything. No. It wasn't the longest speech in galactic history. It wasn't the most eloquent. It was just one word. But it was enough. Because sometimes, one word spoken with conviction can shake the foundations of empires, can inspire revolutions, can change the course of history. The Council had ruled for 200,000 years. They had seemed eternal, unbeatable, inevitable. But they had made one critical error. They had assumed everyone would always say yes. They had forgotten that sometimes, somewhere, someone would remember that freedom is worth fighting for. That someone had been humanity. And the galaxy would never forget it. The Free Galactic Assembly continued its work, building a new kind of civilization, one based not on fear and tribute but on cooperation and mutual respect. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was theirs, built by free peoples for free peoples. And it had all started with one word. No.